Let me introduce my guest to you this evening. Sanjay Hegde is a senior advocate joining us on the broadcast. Reverend Father Lobo is the PRO of the Catholic Church in Karnataka. Thank you, Father Lobo, for being with us. Firoz Bakht Ahmed is a former Vice-Chancellor of the Maulana Azad National Maulana Azad National Urdu University. He's with us on the broadcast. We have Mr. Subhash Jha, advocate, joining us on the broadcast as well, and Anish Gawande is an LGBTQ plus activist. He's joining us as well. Hi, Anish. Good to have you. Good evening.
And a historian.
Let me start with the lawyer here. You're a historian as well. So, okay, great. Thanks. So, we've got the introductions going. Thank you all very much for joining us. We have ample time on the show. We have approximately about 28 minutes. But I'll request you to keep your comments brief so that other people can come and intervene. Sanjay Hegde, I'm coming to you first. What possibly is the problem with the Uniform Civil Code? I understand that India is a diverse country and that there is beauty in our diversity. But, you know, when it comes to things like marriages and divorces and inheritance, what is the problem if one nation has one law?
Well, I don't see why one nation should have one law. I'll start right there. Long ago, William Blake said, one law for the lion and the ox is tyranny. You have separate laws for small-scale industries. You have separate laws for other industries. So law is all about classification. Uniformity, for the sake of uniformity, is not necessarily a good thing. But having said that, let's examine this idea further. Now, your video spoke about the Portuguese Civil Code. Now, the Portuguese Civil Code in turn comes from the Code Napoleonic. So these are based largely on Christian and Western conceptions of marriage. And they have worked when Goa was part of the Portuguese Empire. But today, as your report also said, that there are several problems which have arisen even with that civil code. Can a Hindu man divorce his wife because she's childless? Or especially in property rights, where there are so many heirs that a lot of Goa, and that's my second home. You go across a lot of Goa, you will see a lot of abandoned properties which cannot be developed simply because there are so many heirs as time has gone by that no one person can consolidate all the titles. So just saying that, you know, for hashtag purposes, Uniform Civil Code is not an answer. I am not dismissing the idea out of hand. I would say, much rather than having a uniform civil code, say that you can have specific codes as long as certain uniform standards are met. You see, one of the problems is that there are different conceptions of marriage. For the Christians and for the Hindus, marriage is a sacrament. For the Muslims, marriage is a matter of contract. And how do you dissolve a contract? How do what are the consequences of dissolution of a contract? Are all matters not only of personal law, they are matters of faith. So how far can you go? I would say, let us have a draft. Okay. Let us also state certain minimum standards that all communities may follow, and then see whether the draft meets those requirements. Without a draft, we're talking in the air.
That's a fair assessment, and I think that is a fair position to see. You're saying there are some inherent problems in the UCC, but let's not jump the gun. Let's see the draft that the government brings in, and then let's make up our mind on that after a debate. And as I said, something like this, something as contentious as the UCC cannot be bought in without a consensus. And when it comes to consensus, it's the Muslims and the Christians in this country whose consensus will be paramount. Just come in here, Firoz Bakht. You're joining us in the studio. I want to ask you, for a Muslim man or a woman, how does life change after the UCC? I mean, to my view, and I hope I'm not being shallow when I say this, but to my view, why should, under any law, polygamy be allowed? Why should a woman of any religion be made to go through that trauma? Something like a lot of people who argue for the Uniform Civil Code say that it is about gender justice more than anything else.
May I? See, Shreya, for a start, let me thank you for the question that you have asked me actually. You just used two words, gender justice. I add gender equality. And this UCC is basically, this will actually counter the patriarchal construct. It is a man's society. I am a man, but you know, I know it is a man's society, whether Muslims, Christians, Hindus, Jews, whosoever. So this is a society where women suffer a lot, especially Muslim women. Muslim women for ages have been suffering, whether it is a question of divorce, whether it is a question of succession, whether it is a question of lending property to the girls, whatever it is, there are so many sub-questions like this. So they have been suffering a lot. And since they had been suffering for so many years, that's why there was this ban on triple talaq, though talaq-e-Hasan still remains. There is hardly any difference between triple talaq, which is in which a woman is discarded within 3 seconds in a, in a sitting, and in talaq-e-Hasan, it takes 3 months. Same thing, but gap of time. Now, having said that, let me come to the question. You also said that whether it is for, for election, vote bank, Hindu vote bank, Fala vote bank, no. Elections, India is a huge country, and elections keep on happening every now and then. You know, in 5 years, every now and then, almost every month, every 15 days, there is a big or small election, right? So one should not jump to that conclusion that it is because of the government is trying to save some problems. Each and every government has a problem, whether it is US, UK, France, Australia. Government is not hiding its problems, right, under the guise of this UCC. One thing I believe, last 5 seconds, since, there are some communities, especially Muslim community, they just see a red rag, to the bull in the words Uniform Civil Code. Let the wording be changed and let it be Indian Common Code rather than Uniform Civil Code. I think that suggestion, if some people, responsible people in the government. And last thing is, people think Prime Minister Modi is bringing it. He's done remarkable work over the last 5 years, 370, banning of triple talaq and Ram Mandir. He has sorted out all those very pugnacious issues that had been troubling the land. And lastly, I would say that things like personal laws, things like reservations, they have made India divided house. Thanks God that we have a Prime Minister who is taking out India of that quagmire. India will be a very powerful country, as they say, Jagat Guru, if this law is implemented.
Okay. So you are clearly batting for it. You are saying it's about it's about gender equality, not about.
I have also filed a petition in the Apex Court to implement it.
Okay, Reverend Father Lobo, please come in here. Please help me understand how the UCC and why many from the Christian and the Muslim community think that the UCC is an interference in their religious practices. You know, before coming to this show, I read a lot of articles on the UCC, especially articles that were written with a lens on the Muslim community and the Christian community. And the one thing I found very surprising and constant and uniform was the fact that most people mentioned in the article who were against the UCC were men. Now, that's not a coincidence, is it? For example, for Catholic Christians, divorce is not kosher. For a woman, a Catholic woman, to get a divorce, she has to run around in circles. It makes things very difficult. Why should a Catholic woman under the UCC not have a right to divorce easily, like women across other religions?
Okay, now you give me time after a long time. Please give me some time to explain. First thing is, it is so sad and unfortunate that the Prime Minister of a country wants to speak about UCC when the whole Manipur is burning. The Prime Minister has no time to speak about Manipur. He has not uttered a word. Anyway, that is his prerogative, his choice. But now the question is, as you already put it, is it to fulfill the pledge that the government had made during elections, they are going to fulfill it? UCC, you are asking why not UCC? I'm asking why UCC? What is the benefit? Is it based on the fact that we want to have oneness all over India? Unity or uniformity, is it the watchword of the government to establish all over? I'm explaining to the government and to you, through you, to the people of India, that India is a diverse country. We have to always strive hard to find unity in diversity. We cannot bring this diversity into uniformity or oneness. So therefore, now the question is, the minority in a special way today finds it very difficult to get into this UCC because first and foremost, the government's bounden duty is to protect the rights of the weak. And minority community is vulnerable and weak. When vulnerable community and weak community is there, it has to have some protection by the law. The rights have to be protected by the government. So now you cannot make the able-bodied persons to run with the physically handicapped persons. 100-meter race cannot be run by able-bodied and handicapped persons together. So therefore, the law has to be always siding with the weak and the marginalized. Now, therefore, the question is, who decides the uniform civil code? Whose mind is put together? Is it coming up through consensus or someone is bulldozing? So the assumption here looks like uniform civil code is the best solution for the problems that we are facing. Who said that this particular law will have all the solutions for the problems? Problems will be there even after uniform civil code, because uniformity will always be opposed, because the diversity is the rule of the law. Yeah.
Okay, Father Lobo, then let me ask you a counter question here. You are saying that the job of a law is to protect the rights of the vulnerable, right?
Yes.
Many people, including the government, says that is exactly what the UCC will do. It will protect the rights of a woman in this country. For example, I started by asking you a question that you have not still responded to. Why should a Catholic woman have to run around in circles in this country to get a divorce? And she has to do it because Catholic Christians don't exactly recognize divorce. So let me finish, Father. I'll let you speak. Why should a Kerala Syrian Christian woman have to go to court for the right to inheritance to her father's property? It has happened.
Ms. Shreya,
more than anything else, says the government, UCC is about gender justice.
Ms. Shreya, I have to say this, that you are ill-informed about the divorce laws among the Christians. Women as well as man have equal right to approach the court, and both are equally heard, and the solution is found in consensus. So there is no problem for divorce if there is a genuine ground. So church is not against divorce when there is proper ground. So faith and the practice of religion are together. So the religion is the way of living of a person who believes in certain way. So therefore, the divorce laws among the Catholics, among the Christians, are equal to both male and female. There is no discrimination whatsoever. And as regards the land, the rule of the law of the land so far gives this right. Now, if, let us say, if the male and female, man and woman, they have to have joint ownership. The Catholic Church is all the more supporting this. We have no problem. And for that, we need to have a uniform civil code. The law that we have already gives right in the inheritance of the parents, already gives equal rights, already gives.
But if that is the case, why are there voices from within the Christian community or the Muslim community to reform personal laws? And these are constant and growing voices. And these are voices that have now been heard across the country. But let me, you're speaking of diversity. Let's speak a little bit more.
Father Lobo, yes, Reverend Lobo, I have a very simple question for you. I have myself studied in a missionary school. I have all the respect and regard for all my Christian brethren all over the world. Now, you see, the question is that you just said that we are not well informed about Christian law. Maybe you are right, you are the best person. But tell me one thing, all these Western countries, they have, whether it is USA, UK or whatever it is, Germany, they have one law, they have their own uniform law, and uniform law not only in terms of all these things but education also. That's why they are way ahead of India. So don't you think that if uniformity of laws comes even in education field, will India not be a #1 country in the days to come?
Sir, I'm all for you, I'm with you, but at the same time, issue-based discussion has to happen. Now, education, who said we are not for the education of women? We are for the education of all. And if you see, the church is the front runner in educating both the male and female, and also the marginalized people, those people who are in the remote places. We are giving education because we see that education is the best thing to develop a person. So therefore, give them understanding of the world.
Let's get...
You haven't answered my question.
Let's get back on track. Let's get back on track to the issue at hand. And we have been speaking about diversity. So let me why diversity is beautiful and important in this country. So I'm getting in Anish Gawande, who is an LGBTQ+ activist and a historian as well. Anish, first of all, thank you very much for your patience, and thank you to Mr. Subhash Jha for his patience as well. These discussions are sometimes long drawn, so people who haven't spoken yet can get a bit impatient. So thank you for your patience.
In the morning in New York City. So I am still processing all of these very big questions. But I think I have just one question to ask, responding to your point. You said the UCC is about gender justice. I would like to ask the government, and you have no government panelists, so I'm a little upset with you, because I would have loved to hear their response. But I would love to ask the government that if the UCC is about gender justice, will they grant marriage equality under the UCC? The government has argued in court barely 3 weeks ago that marriage is a civilizational institution, that marriage is not a contract. And if you want to have the UCC, then you need to also recognize that every single Indian citizen is entitled to equal respect and equal protection under the law. So will the UCC involve marriage equality is my first question. I think my second more important point, drawing from both what Sanjay said very eloquently and then what Nikun said incredibly astutely, is around Goa's example, right? I think the Goan UCC is a Portuguese relic. We've always managed to sort of tend to these laws and make them our own. And I think it's a great example. But the Portuguese UCC has a very different conception of marriage. It's a conception of marriage that says that it is a contract, and it does allow for things like divorce and other sort of progressive amendments. So what is going to be the fundamental basis of creating this UCC? I was in DC just last week when Prime Minister Modi was here, meeting with a range of stakeholders across the US State Department, encouraging them, not telling them to tell the Indian government what it should do, but rather to encourage them to get into dialogue with the Indian government and say that if you want to embark upon a UCC project, then there must be widespread consultations that must come from an honesty of intent. My own grandfather was a professor of Sanskrit in the Government of Law College, and he actually worked directly with Babasaheb Ambedkar on drafting the Hindu Code Bill, arguably the most sort of controversial piece of legislation that the BJP that is currently in power right now and its sort of ideological forefathers opposed tooth and nail. And he translated the Daya Bhagas for Ambedkar, and these were distributed widely not just in the Constituent Assembly, but also in ordinary homes, ordinary towns, people who ask for their opinion. We are a participative democracy. The UCC cannot be brought in like they brought in Article 370's amendment. It cannot be brought in like they have brought in the farm laws. It has to be an understanding that as a democracy, we must respect the voices of everybody involved. I encourage the Prime Minister. I've been opposed to him. I've run 2 campaigns against him in 2014 and 2019. Most likely, you will see me on another election campaign and we'll talk on different issues on your show when that happens for the elections. But this is not an electoral issue. Let us leave it apart from elections, although it always does come up before elections and at election rallies. I agree with the panelists before me. It's not an electoral issue. But the Prime Minister must inspire confidence that when the UCC does get created, or a project like the UCC, which he claims has noble intents, is put into practice, then he will take everybody along, that there will actually be Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. There will actually be Sabki Awaaz as well in this conversation. And that Sabki Awaaz is missing, except on channels like yours, which are still nice enough to have me over, although before my morning cup of coffee. So those are my few points. I think I can speak more as we move along, but I think these are critical considerations that require confidence, you know, Shreya.
I agree that you cannot go ahead with the UCC without consensus. And the Law Commission right now has asked for opinions from various religious heads, from citizens who want to say anything.
Shreya, you know, I'll tell you as someone,
so having said that, I just also want to...
groups. Shreya, quickly, if I can just quickly say, there are many lobbying groups that will submit recommendations to the Law Commission. At Pink List India, the organization that I run, we will submit recommendations as well. I really would encourage you, and for any shows that you have in the future, to tell the government to consider each of these recommendations seriously. The government cannot approach any critique from a place of distrust. When I'm critiquing the government or saying that the UCC needs to be changed, maybe to include marriage equality, I might be opposed to the political party. I might be opposed to the Prime Minister, but I care for my country. And if I care for my country and I'm giving an honest piece of advice, like many other LGBTQ plus Indians are, why are our suggestions being ignored? Why are our voices not being heard? Why is the government still opposing marriage in court? And why don't we have a sort of way in which we can dialogue with this government? So the Law Commission's effort is commendable. I hope that it goes forward in the way it should, but it often ends up being a bureaucratic exercise where only the voices of those who the government wants to listen to are listened to. So I really hope that they go across the board. My grandfather also served in the Law Commission, and I think it's an incredibly powerful institution. It's a voice of reason. It's what is meant to give the government unbiased, unpolitical, neutral opinions. And I hope the Law Commission hears everyone involved. But I also hope in some way that the government, its ministers, have some humanity and hear those involved. Because that's all we can ask of them. They have come in democratically elected. If they want to remove 370, they can remove 370. If they want to introduce UCC tomorrow, they can introduce UCC. I am nobody. I'm not going to be able to stop them from introducing the UCC. What I can plead with them is to say that stick to the values you came with. What I can say is please believe in the values you claim to espouse across the world and in India. And let's have an honest discussion. Let's have a discussion where you truly listen. And let's have a discussion where everyone feels included. Because unless we have a politics of compassion, thorny issues like social issues cannot be dealt with just through the law. They can't just be fixed through the courtrooms. We've forgotten about politics. We've forgotten that politics is about reaching hearts and minds. And if this government realizes that again, I think the UCC will be just another challenge that will be embarked upon with us as a nation coming together and collectively deciding upon its future without any malice. Sorry, I've already taken on too long, so I'm sure others have lots more to say.
No, that's fine. That's fine. You've been very articulate and eloquent, so it was a pleasure hearing you. But here's the thing, Anish. You asked me, you told me you were upset about the fact that I don't have a government representative on the show. Now, Sanjay Hegde has been on this show often enough, and he will tell you that every time you call a government representative or a representative from any other political party, the entire debate becomes a Hindu-Muslim debate. And the one thing I promised myself this evening was, let's not reduce this to a Hindu-Muslim debate, because it's not that. It's more than just a Hindu-Muslim debate. Let's get... No, we
I'm very
can't.
grateful
I
to be
mean,
on
we
the show.
can't.
I'm not a
Certainly not on
politician, so I'm
TV
very
debates.
grateful.
But for this 1 hour, I'm very grateful that we don't have politicians on the show. But we do have Mr. Subhash Jha, who is an advocate and who is almost as good as a BJP spokesperson, because that's the side he bats for, and he's very clear and articulate about that as well. He doesn't shy away from that. Subhash ji, बड़ी सारी बातें हो गई हैं शो में.
Shreya,
अनीश ने भी बोल दिया है कि देखिए, if you're talking about the uniform civil. सुभाष जी सवाल तो पूछने दीजिए.
No. You
सुभाष
said
जी
about
सवाल ही नहीं
BJP.
पूछने दे रहे आप.
You said about BJP, therefore I wanted to tell you. Anyway,
अच्छा बोलिए.
Please ask your question.
बोलिए. नहीं आप बोलिए.
The BJP.
My question is, you've just heard Anish, and you've heard other concerns as well. When it comes to the uniform civil code, and you've been on my show often enough, saying that same-sex marriage in this country cannot be allowed. That marriage equality cannot be allowed in this country. Now, please tell me, sir, when the UCC comes in, it's a uniform civil code. It's a civil code for every citizen in this country. Will the government consider the LGBTQ plus community as its own citizens and bring them under this umbrella as well and give them, give them marriage equality? Anish ka sawal tha ye.
Shreya, let me not respond first to LGBTQ issue. Let me first of all respond to Uniform Civil Code. The Constitution of India was brought in this country, was brought to the statute book on 26th of January 1950, which would mean it is 73 years now. It is 73 years plus 3 months more. So how long this consensus is going to take place? And it is a constitutional mandate. It is Article 44 was not brought in by way of amendment. It is the original, when the Constitution was written, Article 44 finds its place, which says it is a constitutional mandate that every state shall make an endeavor to secure for citizens a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India. So therefore, this being constitutional mandate, and look at what happened in the Supreme Court. Way back in 1985, the first case, the Shah Banu case, the Constitution Bench, headed by Justice Y.V. Chandrachud, 38 years have gone by. And thereafter, the Supreme Court precisely reminded that Article 44 has to be put in place. Thereafter, in 1985, again in the matter of Jordan versus Chopra, Supreme Court once again reminded that what happens to the Common Civil Code. Now, as recently as in 1995 in Sarla Mudgal case, the Supreme Court used very, very strong worded language for the government, not the state governments or government of India, not making any endeavor or making headway in bringing to the or implementing Article 44 of the Constitution of India. So there has to be a common civil code.
What are you trying to say?
Not a matter of debate. It cannot be a matter of debate. It has to be in place. And precisely this is what the Prime Minister of India has said today.
You're saying it's not a matter of debate. How is it not a matter of debate? How is it not a matter of debate?
Now,
I will let the other lawyer come in, Mr. Hegde come in, but how is this not a...
How many years we should have debate on this?
1 minute. What do you mean how many years? Kya?
How many years?
There has been the exercise of consensus building.
We have waited for 74 years, 73 years.
So how
many more years?
Queer people are not.
You must have waited, but where has there been a debate? Where has there been a consensus?
Implementing this.
The consensus is very important.
Let me put it this way.
I agree.
People have existed since before this country was independent.
Anyway, this is not an issue of altogether.
Subhashji, no, you must answer this issue.
We will resolve this issue first.
LGBT.
We will have no. Your problem is a different problem, and I have a different.
I must call the hypocrisy.
I have a different opinion about LGBTQ.
Subhashji, it's not a different problem.
We are digressing the issue.
You're talking about a uniform civil code. It's for every citizen in this country, including the LGBT community.
Every citizen would not mean to include same-sex marriage. We are digressing from the issue. That is not the issue.
No,
I think the issue is common civil.
What are we changing? Sir, we are changing our marriage acts. We are changing our inheritance act. We are changing our adoption acts, which is what the UCC seeks to change and streamline. What is the LGBT community in the Supreme Court asking for right now? A change in marriage acts, a change in inheritance acts, a change in adoption acts. If a UCC has to come in, it has to acknowledge the concerns of the LGBT community.
No.
To recognize
this is a different issue altogether.
Bigger ideological project.
It is not a different issue.
My concerns. You can ignore my concerns for 5 more years. But in 5 more, I promise you that my concerns will be big enough for you not to ignore them. And we will go to any means necessary, including the
that you will go. That you will go.
That
you are going.
And
you are going from the
place. Ek minute, Subhash ji, I have to conclude this debate.
If it rejects and ignores the LGBTQ plus community, the UCC can never have a moral authority. A law is not just a piece of paper. A law is a law that comes into force with moral authority. And without
have queer people, you have no moral authority.
UCC.
LGBT is not the issue.
You have no moral authority because there is no lobbyist.
Completely
the issue.
Anish and Subhash, just a minute.
There's no intent.
I have to wrap this debate. I'll ask you to pause for a minute. I think both of you have made your point. I just want to get in Mr. Hegde. Mr. Hegde, I'll get you in. Mr. Hegde, here's Mr. Jha arguing that for how long will we wait for consensus? We have waited for consensus for 75 years. Nahi hua. Now is the time. Kar do.
Listen. The Uniform Civil Code was, in its time, a requirement that we could try and harmonize as much as possible. It was at a time that the Hindu Code Bill had not come in. Now to this question of how many years, please tell me that how many years shall the ordinary citizen wait for the state to provide men and women equally the right to an adequate means of livelihood? That the operation of the economic system does not result in the concentration of wealth and means of production to the common detriment. Today, when a few families control most of the country's wealth, are we not really making a false choice, saying that we shall prioritize the Uniform Civil Code and forget all about our economic problems? A Uniform Civil Code is a good idea as long as there is a consensus on uniformity. Today, there is no uniformity even within the customs of the Hindu community itself. Even within the Hindu community, there is so much diversity. So, I have one suggestion.
I agree. We are just talking about Muslims and Christians and Hindus. Go ahead.
The Uniform Civil Code would probably have greater acceptance if everybody uniformly got 15 lakhs as was first promised. We are waiting for 9 years.
Arey, Sanjay ji. Sanjay ji. Chaliye, we'll leave it there for the moment.
This is not done.
Okay, time up, and my producer is extremely upset because I think I've walked into the 9 p.m. show as well. But this has been a good educative debate, I would say, and we've tried to get most opinions in. We are a country of 1.4 billion people, and every person in this country has an opinion about everything, especially about the Uniform Civil Code. So this discussion, I'm assuming, will keep happening in this country for the next 6 or 8 months, and we'll try and take it forward in as sane a way as we can. For the moment, it's a wrap. Thank you very much, Sanjay Hegde, for joining us. Father Lobo, thank you very much. Firoz Bakht, thank you very much for coming to us in the studio. And Anish, it was good to have you. Subhashja, always good to have you as well. With that,